So we're going to start off every Mental Game Live with our first segment. And that's always going to be the current events that we have seen in the past week or so in the sports world that we can learn from. When we're watching professional sporting events or college events, if you're not watching to learn, you're missing valuable information. There's so many amazing things that happen during the course of a good match, good tournament, Super Bowl that we can learn from. And this past weekend at the PGA Tour Genesis Invitational, there was a couple things that were just really, really cool. And number one was I got to watch my player Jon Rahm return to number one in the world. That was a very exciting thing to watch. But during that back nine, playing at the Genesis, which is hosted by Tiger Woods, so it has a lot of meaning. The golf course is like a U.S. Open style course. It's demanding across every element of the game. There were some things that happened during that back nine that I thought were relevant and important for every single person out there who competes. You saw two of the top players in the world, Jon Rahm and Max Homa, as well as Keith Mitchell, going down the stretch, and they were playing and competing with immense pressure. And you could see it in their process, their decision-making, and their execution. They were dealing with so many of the same things that you and I go through. But many times, we don't think they go through that. See, we have this impression that sometimes the best players in the world have it all figured out. And what I saw when I was watching that was I saw players moving through their routines faster. I saw players communicate faster, trying shots that they may not have always done because they felt that they needed it there and that the pressure was getting them, and yet they still performed. Now, why can they perform in that setting and we struggle? Well, they are the top players in the world, and they have put themselves in those situations as many times as they possibly can. Mental Game Live is going to be understanding what those factors are. See, pressure, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, pressure is the ultimate separator of players. It's the place that creates the cracks in our foundation and, more importantly, in our armor. And when you look at that and you understand why people struggle there, it's not like it's a failure. So when we're watching our players compete and we're watching them struggle, what happens is we want to help them and we want to point out everything that they do wrong. Oh my God, I can't believe they did that. Oh my God, I can't believe he made that decision. Oh, I can't believe he missed that shot. When in reality, instead, we need to say, how great is this that they're there? Now, what are you learning in that situation? See, Jon Rahm, Max Homa, and Keith Mitchell, who's had a very good month. He's a great player. He's a winner on the PGA Tour, but he's also had an excellent month. See, they're players that have been in that situation quite often. This isn't new to them. This isn't something that they haven't gone through. They're learning every experience that they surge and then they struggle. They surge and they struggle. But after that struggle, they learn. They learn something about their game, their approach, their decision-making, and how they fight. See, that builds. And too often when we get in those situations, it's easy to throw everything away and say, oh, I cannot believe that happened. But we have to learn. That's why I love to watch professional sporting events. A week and a half ago, we watched the Super Bowl. Coming down the stretch, fourth quarter, unbelievable game. Patrick Mahomes, one of the best quarterbacks, maybe pushing towards to ever play the game. Definitely a phenomenal athlete. His dad was a major league pitcher. And as he's coming down the stretch and they're leading down the game, right, there was a very pivotal holding call. And I watched social media people, I cannot believe they would make that call in that situation. And my answer is, I can't believe that official had the guts to make the right call. You know why? Because the Chiefs forced the Eagles to make a mistake. They forced them. See, in any kind of sporting event, there's 3 to 4 inflection points that happen during the game, during the match, during the tournament, or anything. And what happens is people go about it, and our job is to force those inflection points. It's to force that inflection. And what you hope for is that they're not ready for that and that we have to leverage against them. That was a very simple play that James Bradbury made a very, very bad choice on. Now, was it instinctual? Sure. Was it pressure? Absolutely. But that's the job of the opponent, is to force that. And our job as a player is to be ready for that. See, the thing that would have been great as a player for James Bradberry is to say, keep your hands in front, don't get caught up, don't put an official in that position, make the play, but don't commit the penalty. The penalty was tragic. It allowed the Chiefs to run out the clock and kick the game-winning field goal. At the biggest moment, you have to be ready for those inflection points. My coach used to call it how to win awareness, HWA. Great teams, great players, great leaders have the ability to see a half second ahead in the future and anticipate, because just like we talked about in that first point, they have that experience. They know what they're doing. They know how going about it. They understand that that is difficult. They're not lowering their attention and focus. They're rising it up. They're not increasing tension, but they're dialing in their focus a little bit more, which we're going to come back to in segment 2. What other things have I seen in this past season or this past couple of weeks? Well, what about the Full Swing documentary, if you're a golf fan? Now, I'm going to give you some full disclosure. I haven't watched the whole thing yet. It's kind of close to home as I work out there on a regular basis. But you're getting to see players and them dropping the veil a little bit, pulling the curtains back and showing you what they go through. And I got a lot of comments about Brooks Koepka and his battles. And what I'll tell you is that's more the norm than the exception. Now, different causes and different reasons, but the truth of the matter is what Full Swing is going to expose and continue to expose is the difficulty of the journey. See, when we watch professional athletes at the top of their game, we assume that that is the standard that everybody should aspire to. That's not the standard. The standard is the late nights, the dark days, the miserable times, the struggles that people are going through that they overcome along the way. That's what we don't often see. And it's always funny. We always laugh around the Olympics as they'll always come in with a feel-good story. But what you see in the Olympics, what you see at the professional ranks, and what you see in those environments are people having to push through so many different struggles. What I want every one of us to understand as you're going through this, and whatever you're doing, is that struggle is the norm, not the exception. Struggle is the invitation, not the rejection. Struggle is the door that gives you, or the window that gives you insight into what your process is, not the validation whether or not you belong or not. Too often we see struggle as a rejection of what we think we can do. Full Swing is showing you that there's a lot of pieces, there's a lot of team members involved. You know, a lot of times I hear people say, well, you got to think like Tiger Woods, you got to play like Kobe, you got to be like LeBron or Michael, you got to, be like Simone Biles. Like, are you kidding me? They're the greatest outliers we've ever seen in sports. They're brilliant competitors, but they're not the norm. The norm are players that push through to achieve what they can in the moment. Study and watch and learn and look just beyond in those documentaries of what it takes, the difficulty, the dark nights, the exhaustion, the doubts, the fears that are the standards. I promise you'll understand more. Speaking of that, let's dive into Jalen Hurts, huh? Man, what a great player. I was fortunate enough to watch Jalen firsthand at Alabama for a couple years, 3 years, I guess. And I watched him rise up to, I appreciate that. Smash the like button. Keep bringing it. I'm going to try to watch these comments as I go along. Wendy had a question real quick about Joel Damon. Look, I love Joel. I love Gino, his caddy. Know them a long time. They're great. His self-doubt and protection mechanism. I don't work with Joel firsthand, but I'll tell you this. There are certain people who have high belief, and there are certain people who love to play the underdog. Joel does a great job playing the underdog. Don't worry. If you have a wallet full of cash, he'll find a way to take it. He's not afraid of it out there. But I think what you saw was somebody who, that's his modus operandi, right? It's how he works through his stuff. Some of us are super, goal directed, and we look at the top of the mountain, and others look at ourselves and go, I just don't know. Maybe I'll dive in on a future episode about the different competitive mindsets. And if you read Break Free from Suckville, you'll see that in there. Okay. So I'll come back. I'm going to try to come back and answer some of these questions. These are great. Keep them going. But Jalen Hurts, I watched Jalen win a locker room his freshman year at Alabama and take over. He took over not because he was the most talented quarterback on the field. See, you can measure guys in the 7-on-7s and how they threw it. Jalen Hurts won the team because he was the best quarterback on the field. Not just because he was the best quarterback because of skills and talent. He did it because he won the locker room. Players trusted him. He worked his tail off. And he did all the little things right. That how to win awareness, Jalen Hurts had it. But what happened was, when he was at Alabama, was a more talented player who embodied much of the same skill sets that he did. The ability to win a locker room, the ability to make the throws, and the ability to lead a team. And Tua Tagovailoa. Tua comes in and takes over. And Jalen had a choice. See, Jalen had a choice to pee in everybody's cereal and be miserable all the time, because that would have been an easy thing to do when you get beaten out. But he didn't. See, when Tua came in and relieved Jalen in the national title game, and Tua threw the pass in the famous 2nd and 26 that won the national title over Georgia, Jalen was the first one to celebrate with him. The next year in the SEC championship in the Georgia Dome, I was there. Tua goes down and gets hurt, and Jalen comes in and rallies the team to a fourth quarter victory. It was a made-for-TV moment, but it was not a surprise to anybody in our building. So when you see Jalen Hurts leading the Philadelphia Eagles, there's an entire process behind him. And a process is something that he said in his postgame. He said, failure is the greatest teacher we have. And I'm going to look at how I can do this to get better. He didn't sit there and put a towel over his head and be angry and frustrated. Instead, he said, I'm going to embrace this and learn to become better. People doubted him at every step of the way, but instead of being doubted, he got determined. He took that and focused himself on what it took to get better and lead a team to the Super Bowl, even when the media doubted him. You think that fuels him? Heck yeah, it does. So back to that question about self-doubt, that's what happens. See, you have to take it as fuel and make it part of you, not as a tattoo or a scarlet letter, but as the motivation to push you through whatever you're doing in your life. And finally, I wrote a pretty good, I was able to contribute to an article by Sean Zach in Golf Magazine. I think Golf Magazine. Hope I'm right, Sean. About Scottsdale and TPC Scottsdale, the 16th hole. When you're on the tee on the 11th tee, it's so loud. On 17, 15, you're hearing it and all this noise. Yeah, I love that, Steve. I had my goals before you had your opinion. Heck yeah. You know, the beauty of that is players in that one tournament a year love that amphitheater feeling. They love it. But the difference is it's not like it's quiet and then somebody yells on them. It's a constant buzz. But they know that they may get booed. They know they're going to get jeered. They know that there's more people at that golf tournament who don't even know there's a golf tournament going on, right? They're there to drink, to party, and have a great time in great weather. And you took a year like this where it was a Super Bowl. So what I've always told my players is we're not going to try to drown out that noise. It's kind of like if you and I are sitting in a coffee shop, which I do most of my writing. We're sitting there and we're talking, and I'm working, and all of a sudden this annoying person sits down next to me. It's going to grab my attention. But if I get angry that it grabs my attention, I'm now giving more power to that distraction. I'm now giving that person more control to control me. See, what I have to do is look at it and go, distracted, okay, and then I come back. So whenever we're in life, right, I get this question often. How do you sustain focus? And the question is, you don't. You redirect it. So Scottsdale was a perfect example, a place for us to practice, to train, to be in a scenario where you learn to get distracted and then refocus it back in, like dialing in our focus and our attention.